March the 15th. This is a report by Garland Blaine of the council meeting held at Pawnee yesterday, Saturday, in which the Nasharo Council and Business Council members were present. Okay, are we recording? Let us see. This is Sunday, March the 15th, 1970.
March the 14th, 1970. Council meeting at Pawnee by the Business Council of the Pawnee Tribe and the Nasharo Council of the Pawnee Tribe, the Chiefs Council. Opening prayer by Philip Matthews, and a report by Alvin Leading Fox and Sam Osborne. They went to Second National Indian Workshop on School Affairs. Mr. Leading Fox is tribal representative, and I asked what Sam's at first they said Sam was a state representative. Well, when I got down and asked him where did he get his, after the report, I said, Sam, what was your title? And he was very evasive, and I said, show me a letter or show me something that what authority gave you this title. Well, he didn't have that, so I didn't want to cause any more, so I didn't say any more. And
this was the time yesterday when you told me about that they had made a report to the agent.
Then they said, well, we made a report to the agent, we made a report to the Business Council, and I said, I got up and I said, well, this is all good. I'm glad that you made these reports. I said, but here I want you to know, no misunderstanding, that the Chiefs Council is just as interested. And I believe that you should have reported also to the Chiefs Council. And I said, I know the Chiefs Council members are glad that you made this, so I think I'm speaking for all of them. And they said they were going to call another meeting of the tribe and tell the tribe what they had learned down there, and give them the news about PTA meetings and getting involved and all that stuff that is now the trend of all meetings. And they were going to call a meeting and have the BIA people there and the tribal members. And I said, well, I got up again and I said, it might seem that I do a lot of talking. I said, and that's the way I want it to seem. I said, because I do have questions. And I said, when I ask these questions, it's that we want to know. It isn't that we want to try to pin you down to anything that might be embarrassing. I said, if I sense that I am going in that direction, I said, I'll sure stop it, because I don't want to embarrass anybody. I said, however, I may bring certain things out. So I said, I make a recommendation here that when we do have this meeting, let's call the school faculty and also I said, now you have already stated you were going to call the city mayor and the city people. I said, but the school faculty is the one we want to know. We want them to know that we know what the Johnson O'Malley is, and we fully understand it, and that we don't want it to get, for the money to be funded and go into policies that are advantage to the school, but disadvantage to the Indians. I said, these things we want them to know. I said, so I say that we bring all the teachers, superintendent and the principal, and let them hear us discuss, and also ask them what they recommend. I said, now remember, they are running the school, but we want to see that it's run fairly, not only the way they see it. Okay, so it went on then to the discussions of amendments.
I think there was one thing about hamburger that you didn't mention.
Oh yes, I also stated that Mr. Hamburger was the president of the school board, and since he worked for the Indian agency, he was working for the good of the Indians. And I said, a man in his position, working for the good of the Indians, president of the school board, and yet you people say that you know nothing about the Johnson-O'Malley Act. I said, it just doesn't seem like. I said, what kind of people do we have around here? I said, it seems to me that it should be first. Their first line of thinking should be to pass on all the information to the Indians, which would make it much more easier for them to understand and to reciprocate, you know.
And didn't you say the business council hadn't even heard of the Johnson-O'Malley Act?
They said they did.
Mallory Act. So this is why Hamburg isn't doing his job, because he hadn't informed the business council or the chief's council of the changes in the...
Hasn't informed anybody anything. You know. Yeah, so...
The idea I got yesterday is that Hamburger is not working for the good of the Pawnee Indian children.
Not
he's
the
on
way
the school board, but that's the last of his considerations.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
if
the
he
way
has
it's
said
here.
nothing to the Indians about the business they discuss, well, man, he just... I don't know how to put it in words, but he's just not there.
He's not, he's not doing his job.
Okay. Discussion amendments?
Okay.
So the next thing, Mr. Delbert Horsechief Jr. got up, and he is the chairman of the committee on to make amendments on the Pawnee Charter and bylaws. So the first thing they talked about was the first thing that he said was about cutting down the tribal government. This was 4 steps. He said one step is do away with the chief's council. He said we have 16 members in all of both councils. And when you pay $10 a piece to each one per diem, he said that takes a lot of money. So he said we want to cut down expenses, and we recommend that we make one of 4 steps. 1, cut out the chief's council altogether. Number 2, cut the chief's council to 4 and cut the business council to 4. Number 3, keep all 16 members, but only pay for the regular quarterly meetings. Number 4, do away with the business council. So I got up then and took the floor, and I said, you can recommend any one of the 4. I said, but whoever you keep, if you should cut out the chief's council, I said, that if you want to do that and the people want to do that, I said, that's all right. I said, if you want to cut out the business council and you make that recommendation and you get the people to vote a referendum vote and it turns out like that, I said, that's all right. I said, if you cut both councils to half, I said, that's all right. I said, if you, whatever you do, I said, there must one thing be done. Whoever you keep, it must then retain the name Pawnee Nasharo Council. I said, because they are the ones that is a party to making the treaty with the government. I said, and they must keep their identity and their status, and this keeps the government structure intact, and the government cannot then make another treaty because we have changed our governing entity. I said, you have to keep the chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of discussion. And Mr. Fields, the chairman of the business council, finally got up and he said, well, we've learned a lot of things that we didn't know. He said, and I'm sure that the consensus of both councils is that when we discuss it further, I'm sure that this idea of dropping the chiefs, I'm sure that's out. He said, and I'm sure that the consensus is not to cut down to half and half or cut out the business council. He said, I'm sure that the consensus of both is to keep all 16 members and only pay quarterly meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, he said that this would be discussed at another time. These were recommendations brought out so that both sides could discuss them and come to a conclusion. And at first, Mr. Fields said, we will read these off. We don't want to bypass the Nasharo Council, he said, but we will vote on these resolutions and send them off to Washington, and if the Washington office approves them, they will then come back and we will then have a referendum vote.
And that's when you jumped up.
And, well, first, Mr. Horsechief said, well, let me say something before you, Garland. I said, all right. He said...
Which one was this, Delbert?
Delbert.
Okay.
He said, these are not... he said, we didn't bring these in form of resolutions. He said, we brought them just in forms of recommendations. He said, when we decide on them, then the resolutions will be drawn up here.
Mm-hmm.
And he told Art, he said, and I don't think just the business council better vote on them. He said, I think that the Chiefs Council has to vote too. And
what did Art say to that?
He just smiled, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that here was my idea. Well, if they go ahead and do that, then I will take those resolutions or those recommendations or whatever they were, take them and copy them,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was sent a letter along with them
Mm-hmm.
answering each of the steps
Mm-hmm.
to the office.
Mm-hmm.
And I am sure that there I would say that these are apparently, unmistakably, not for, none of these are recommended for the good of the Pawnees.
Mm-hmm.
This plainly shows,
Mm-hmm.
with no reservations, that these are answers showing their frustrations and
The council, business council.
yeah, the business council's frustrations and their own little petty jealousies,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And of course, this would be a big favor for me, for the business, for the Chiefs Council.
Yeah.
But Delbert had well, when he was a chairman, he never left the Chiefs out.
Mm-hmm.
He always said, "Shall we all vote together?"
Mm-hmm.
Or instead of having the Chiefs vote by themselves, let's all vote, and we'll put the number of businessmen that said yes, number of chiefs that said yes, and number that said no, and number that said no. Then we do that all at one time.
What did some of the yesterday you said what Philip said and so forth? I think that ought to be put down and.
Well, Philip said, "You have that letter that was written to my father," and I said, "Yes."
Mm-hmm.
That's the 1928 letter that says that the government felt that they were the ones to have caused a lot of the chiefs' power being taken away from them, and they were now restoring.
Mm-hmm.
They had now more power than they ever had before.
Mm-hmm. That's the business council had taken away.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
At that time, it was the junior council,
mm-hmm.
and or there was this. They were going through this reorganization, and at that time, I also think that it wasn't the business council. We didn't have a business council. The junior council was starting, but I think at that time they were forming the junior council. But I think the agent had more
Mm-hmm.
to say yes or no to anything, and the chiefs would have to try to get on his good side,
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what it referred to. I think that's what it's referring to, the losing power as opposed to their agent.
Mm-hmm.
I think their agent had the power to do whatever he wanted to, and the chiefs had lost their power.
Yeah.
All right, now then this little council that is starting, well, the agency sanctioned that, and the chiefs, he went along with them just like they're doing today.
Yeah.
So Philip said he's the one that wrote the letter up there for his father, and this is the answer they got. So he got up and he expounded on it. I tell you, by golly, he hit the floor and he raised his voice, and the only thing he didn't do was to go around and kick each one of them.
The business council.
Yeah. He really, he let them have it, as they say. Well,
John Wayne Jake, did he make any points on this thing?
I don't remember what he said. I think he just got up and said that I think that I go along with Garland.
They all who spoke at this resolution.
Yeah, Austin got up and he said, I have never known. Oh, he said, now at one time we had a bad deal. He said, and there was he said George Roberts was in as chairman. And he said he ran the council with iron fist. And he said he even kicked me off the council with no hearing. He said, now, even though there was bad feeling between he and I, and that even though he did this to me, he said, I do remember that not one time did he ever leave the chief's council out of anything. He said even at the special meetings that he called, he always called the chief's council. He said any meeting, there was never one meeting called where the chief's council wasn't present. And he said, and he already had his mind made up what he was going to do, and he did it. He said, but yet he always asked the chiefs, here's what I would like to do. He said, and at that time, he said, all of his, the chiefs always went along with him because it was always, they had to give and take a little bit sometimes. So they'd cut some of his out, and he would get some of his to go, And so they went to the next item.
Yeah.
The next item was that the way the bylaws stand now, the Chiefs Council has a right to review, or rather they have a right to oust any business council member if his conduct isn't in keeping with a tribal leader. So they didn't like that, and they said we ought to be able to remove a chief's councilman. The business council should have the same power to remove one of our members as so we could remove one of theirs. And I said, well, before I had said that that I didn't know the amendments that they had, but I would make a flat statement that any of their recommendations would always would somehow it would go back to this, that it couldn't be changed. It would affect that you had to keep the chief's counsel as it was. And I said, if we do change anything, we're going to have to show that it's for the good of the people. You know. All right, now, then when they brought this up about they wanted the power to remove a chief's counsel, I said, and I got up then, and well, in fact, they just all then looked at me. You know,
bet they did.
What have you got to say now? You know.
Yeah.
So I got up and I said, "Thank you, gentlemen." Everybody just kind of laughed, you know. And I said, "Now, in any organization that is strong and that will be sanctioned by the government and that's in keeping with democracy and our Bill of Rights, or you know, I didn't say Bill of Rights, but it's in keeping with our form of democracy." I said, you are going to have balance of powers. And I said, and this is one of them. I said, I'm going to just make a flat statement here, forget it. I said, it cannot be that way. I said, even if you write a resolution and send it up there, and even if it's, I said, I'm sure they would say no. I said, and if it came back and you ran it through anyhow, and even if the people voted to have it like that, I said, I don't think it'd pass up there, because this is then a poor contract. I said, and they don't want a poor contract. I said, they want one that's fair. So I said, now here's the deal. We can remove one of you because you are elected. I said, you are elected at large. I said, you cannot remove one of us because we are selected by our own bands. And I said, now, you might be able to see one of us that isn't doing the right thing and bring a bunch of charges. Then you will have to go to the chief's council and say, you have a member that we think that is not doing right. Here's the charges we have brought up against him. I said, then the chief's council would then sit down and have an investigation. I said, in our bylaws it says that we can make our own rules. I said, so depending on the gravity of these charges, I said, the chief's council could remove one of their own members, or else the chief's council then can recommend to this band that this person be removed. I said, so you do have a way that you could remove a chief's council. So Mr. Horseshoe said, let me ask a question. I said, all right.
This is Levi.
No.
Delbert.
Delbert.
Why? Make it clear who it is.
Well, you know, see, this is
I know you know, but
No, I
in
don't know.
history.
It's this.
Go ahead.
Well, anyway. So Delbert said, "Let me ask a question." I said, "All right." And he said, "Now, I think it would be best to have this in black and white in the bylaws." And I said, "Well, I don't want to make any statement about that." I said, "Right now, I would say it doesn't have to be." I said, "But uh, this could come to a referendum vote, and if the people want it like that, it could be." I said, "Now, these are one of those things that uh, I said, I'm not saying no, but I'm saying why, what good is it going to be if it's in black and white? You already have it." He said, "Yes, but you know it. And since you've explained it to us, now we know it. We didn't know this before." You know,
Of course.
they just didn't think, just didn't think of those terms, So Art, he didn't go one way or the other, he didn't say, I. So Burchard got up and he said, "Well, I think that the business council should also have the power to remove one of us." I said, "Well, now, since you've brought that up," I said, "this would change our status a little bit." I said, "And any time you change our status, that's one weak point that's against us as opposed to the government." I said, "And I said they could move us around a little more easier then." I said, "Right now they can't." So Art said, "Well, I think we have to leave that alone too." He just didn't. He didn't. It was just one of his. He didn't take the floor to say it. He just kind of smiled. He said, "Well, yeah, I didn't know that." He said, "I think we better leave that alone too." Well, it's getting around towards dinner time then. So they decided to have another meeting, April the 11th. Now, Levi Horse Chief then got up during that discussion, and he said that he was directly opposed to having business council have the power to remove a chief councilman. Wayne Jake got up and he said the same thing, and Austin got up and he implied that. Most anyone else didn't have too much to say.
There's something we haven't said here, and that was that part of some amendment or resolution where they had said that a member could never run again. Remember?
Oh
that?
yeah, during that time, he was reading this. Well, he said, we want the power to remove a chief's councilman, and after he's removed, would never again lose his right to ever be on the chief's council again. So Levi Horsechief said, "Well, if that's the case, whenever you remove one of us, well, we'll just run for the business council." And they hadn't stopped to think about that, and they just kind of smiled, and Lynn Rice, boy, he let a long whistle, and he said, "No," he said, that would never go in. He said the government would never recommend anything like that.
Yeah.
He said, "Because you are taking a man's right away." He said, the Bill of Rights gives you that right.
What was that where somebody said, and well, then we can remove, it would work both ways, that if I don't remember what it was, that we, I think it was Levi said it, you could remove them for something and then they could never run again either. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, "Well, if you're going to make it like that," he said, "we better also put in there that when we remove one of you, you could never run for the business council again or the chief's council."
Let's see, that was the amendment. Now there was another amendment that we all kind of agreed on, but I don't even remember what that one was.
Yesterday I might have said something about something that we could probably agree on. You know, I may, I just...
Yeah, his amendment is, let's see. There were so many things you mentioned yesterday that they keep going through my mind as you're talking. Then I forget to ask you about it. Well, another thing about that April 11th meeting that Levi said about the tribal reserve, remember?
Oh, yes. He said, when this April 11th meeting comes up, he said, we would like for the business council to get Earl there so that, he said, for the last 3 meetings you all have kind of hedged about not having him there. So I didn't say anything, but on the way down I had told Levi, now when we have our next meeting, now we're going to tell them that we want Earl there. I said, and I'm going to say, if you do not, now when will this meeting be? And they'll tell us. It may be the next regular meeting, which is in April.
Yeah.
Or May. First Saturday in May. I don't know what it is. But I just thought, I said, now I'm going to tell him, be sure and have him there, because he has to make a report. I said, now when we go up there and he's not there then, I said, I think I will just, I want it as an open tribal meeting, and I want the tribe there. I said, then right there is when I'm going to get up and say that I want a resolution drawn up that you've hedged about having Earl here, and you've had plenty of time to get him here. Today he's not here. So as of today, I want all business stopped, and we are now going to have an investigation, and this investigation, in 30 days we will have a meeting, another tribal meeting, and at that time we will give our reasons to remove the whole business council, and right there have a referendum vote, and then have another election, call for another election. Levi says, well, by golly, he said, I think that's the thing to do. I said, but I can't say it today, because they'd get ready for it. I said, now next meeting we have, and he's not there. I said, I'm going to just, and the people are there. I said, I'm going to have to call their hand.
What'd Lynn think about that?
Lynn thought that was a good idea.
Lynn doesn't say much, but he's always in there thinking, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, remember what you said? Now, you didn't mention the outsiders that were visiting, what you said from Anadarko.
Oh, Mr. Hale was there. Mr. Richard was there. And somehow I have a feeling that Mr. Richard is leaning towards the business council due to the fact that he's in align with the Hale and the Anadarko office. So he is going to do most everything that will favor them. So and then when we dispersed there, well, Art got up and everyone was talking, and he says, Mr. Richard, I'm sorry that you had to make this trip, but we didn't do what we wanted to do. Richard just smiled and nodded his head, So I think they got something going.
You someplace yesterday you said something to Hale too, don't you remember? Didn't you address him about something? Huh?
Now, this is something that I would say
Mm-hmm.
if I called the business council, if the chief's council called the business council on the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would make the statement to the people that
Mm-hmm.
they could see there that the chief's council is not controlled
Mm-hmm.
by the agency.
Yeah.
That the business council is, because you people out there, meaning the people, know that the business council, we've had all these meetings and they've never brought Earl over here for him to make a report to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if a man in Hale's position was fair, he would have them do that. But
Yeah.
he's favoring the business council because he could control them, so he lets them get by with things. Now, this is something that I could that would be good for me to say, you know, which I couldn't say yesterday.
Mm-hmm. They're saving that. If they weren't trying to get rid of the government, why would they have Richard up there 3 times in a row trying to prove that, yes, we can, by resolution, remove the chief's counsel or whatever? I mean, I think that this is one of the things about the BIA is that they're so devious that it's...
Well, I think that Richard's coming up there and listening, and then this way he can say, well, the chief's council don't know enough. We could go ahead and run this over them, I think.
Yeah.
And get these guys to go in that direction. But as of yesterday, well, I think Richard now knows that better take another route.
Mm-hmm.
Because
is there any chance that, well, they can't change any bylaws or constitution without voting. So they can't just pass down some little recommendation or directive from the BIA in Washington to eliminate part of the chiefs or all of the chiefs' council. They cannot do that, can they? There's no way in the world they could do that.
they could try it.
Mm-hmm.
They could try it, and if the chief's council doesn't object, well, it could go through.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If they think we don't know a damn thing, well, they could push it on through, see? And that's what they're trying to... That's why they're feeling us out, to see if we know enough to say no.
Now this is the first time that it's come out in the meeting, isn't it? They've
Yeah.
tried the times before. Let's see, last time, how come it didn't come up? These resolutions. What happened that time? I forgot. We didn't record that.
They just thought that they just got up there and said the chief's council can only vote. They can only have 2 areas to vote in, and they gave them to us, and I got it and told them that covers more area than that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I said, well, this has come up all this time, that the chief's council cannot vote, cannot review your actions. I said, now, if you read this, it says that we can review your actions. I said, you stand on where it says only on treaties, tribal membership, and things growing out of treaties. I said, now, this grew out of a treaty.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so we can't review you. I said, now, since this has come up so many times and I have to repeat myself each time, I said, I'm going to tell you here that this is the way it is and this is the way it's going to be, unless you bring me something in black and white that says that we cannot do this. And I said, I don't know where you're going to get it from, because you sure can't get it from the bylaws. So I've been expecting them to come up with something that will say, well, the solicitor in Washington has said this. And I'm going to say, let me read that. And when he gives it to me, I'm going to just tear it up and say, forget it.
Mm-hmm.
This is not worth the paper it's written on. The bylaw says that it has to be a referendum vote by the people. Now, you get it by the people, and I'll abide by it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, may not be a good thing to tear it up.
No.
But I got to let them know somehow. And tearing it up would be the only way that they would feel that I wasn't afraid and I was so confident that nothing would happen.
Correct. Oh, I know something we forgot. The Supreme. You made a comment.
Oh,
that was so well done.
yeah. Now, I told him. I said, now, back in the good old days when the chiefs couldn't read or write, I said the literature they got. I said one chief would go around that 2 or 3 men read.
Yeah.
And I said, and the men couldn't talk too good Indian, so as a result, the chief got 3 different versions. I said, and he didn't like this. And I said, those of you that remember, if you ever read for a chief, I said, he probably ate you out. I said, now, I said, then you all, I said, then there was this junior council that started. I said, now Alvin said that he was one of the first ones, and I said to be a member. I said, well, I said this was a little pressure group, like the Pawnees for Progress that you know today. I said, and I said the people didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
I said they said they were just a bunch of drunks and wild young boys that was wanting to get in. I said, just like they're saying about the Pawnees for Progress, they're just a wild young bunch that don't know anything. I said, well, what you hear today that is said about the Pawnees for Progress, I said that's what was being said about the junior council. I said, and I said, so you all might not believe this. I said, but a pressure group is a small group that is trying to be heard and trying to get in. I said, this is a pressure group. I said, now, this defines a pressure group. I said, now, that's what the Pawnees for Progress are trying to do. They feel that their interest is for the Pawnees. They're sincere.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and they are trying to get in. I said, well, back there, the junior council were young boys. They were sincere, so they were trying to get in.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they just got quiet. I said, so the junior council formed a junior council. They told the old men, we want you. You know that we can read and write. You know that it's not good for you to go around and get different ones to read the letters, because a lot of us can't talk Indian too well. So that's why we want to tell you what's in that letter, but sometimes you don't understand it like we tell you, because we can't talk Indian good enough. I said, so they said, all right, you men can get together then. I said, and I think to begin with there were 12. I said, so they told them, all right, you men get together, and you're going to be taking our place anyway one of these days. So you get together, and when we get a letter, we'll give it to you, and you can read it. You come up with an answer, and we'll say yes or no. I said, all right, so they put in there, we are the supreme ruling body.
In
I
the
said,
bylaws.
huh?
In the bylaws. Good.
I said, now, that is where, at that time, it meant that there would be no one else that would read the chief's literature and give them an answer. I said, so that's where this comes from. I said, but in today's time, we understand it different. I said, so that's what that means. And no one said anything. I sat down. Hart got up and he said, well, since we've had our little history lesson about our bylaws and our tribe, he said, we'll go on.
That supreme ruling body is the thing they just hang on to.
Yeah.
You know, this makes them, has always made them feel that they could dominate the chief's council.
Yeah,
and to have that explained.
I almost got carried away there. First I said, now, there is one thing that that has, when I first started talking, I said, first let me tell you something here. There is one thing that always, I said, you're a tribal member, and you're growing up, you hear there's a chief's council and there's a business council. I said, now, whichever way your folks talk or believe, I said, I might say here, wherever their relatives are. I said, this is the way they talk, and this is the way you kind of grew up. I said, but in growing up, you kind of got your own mind. I said, you believe what your folks said, but after you get a little older, you kind of believe what you think because you're growing up. I said, but yet, this stuff that rubbed off on you, whatever your folks said, I said, it's in you too. I said, that's why a little later on you weigh things. I said, now, your own idea and what your folks believed. I said, so when you're growing up, you know there's a business council, you know there's a chief's council. And suddenly, you run and you find yourself on the business council. I said, now here is one term, or one phrase, that always changes you men. And I said, suddenly you look down there and you see the business council is a supreme ruling body. I said, man, it changes you 100%. I said, now right here is where I'm going to tell you what that means. So I told her how it started. I said, I'm going to give it a little history on it. How it started, what it meant then, and what you think it means today. And then I started in, you know.
Very good.
I mean, I brought that in. I led up to it.
You didn't say that yesterday, so this adds to this today. To have that added into the record. But preceding that, what you just said, Alvin had let himself.
Yeah, Alvin. Yesterday I brought that in, but I forget now what it was. Oh yeah, he said, I was the first member of the Journey Council. Blah blah blah. You know.
He was trying to make a point.
Oh, he was trying to impress that the Journey Council was formed, and this led into the Business Council, and all this prestige. See, he was trying to build it up to prestige, you know. So everything was what was said. Well, this sort of equalized the prestige he was building up to what I had said. I'm sure that most everyone in there believed me. You know, I know that they think that I know quite a bit of this stuff, and that it's not just because they've heard their own families too, probably, you know, say something along that line. And when it's verified by someone in the council, well, I mean, you know, if I wasn't sure, I wouldn't say that in a council meeting, you know.
Of course not. Well, yesterday, you know, he said he was so proud of the fact that he had interpreted or written letters or done something on some special point. He was trying to prove how important they were, you know.
Yeah.
And that was, and then you turn around and say, well, that isn't why they were formed. They were just sort of errand boys for the old chiefs.
Yeah.
Which is what they were.
And